The Vatican told us it was just an excavation, but why did they make us swear an oath before God and burn the contract after signing it? I've been ordered not to speak, but silence doesn't stop the faces that crawl through my dreams. I wasn't supposed to survive that mission. Maybe I didn't. They told me I was chosen because of my faith, but I think they chose me because of how easily I lie. I remember the morning too clearly. Vatican bells tolling above Rome, the sound echoing through the marble corridors like heartbeats in a tomb. I'd been summoned before, of course, for translation work, confessions, routine penance, but this time was different. The letter had no signature, no seal, just a red wax cross pressed over a line of text that read, Sub Petra, Deus tacet. Under the stone, God is silent. A man met me in the north corridor, tall, pale, dressed in Vatican black. He never offered his name. You'll speak only when spoken to, Father de Vere, he said, voice like polished metal. This mission is under pontifical secrecy. You will not discuss it, ever. Not even with God. I almost laughed at that. How do you not discuss something with God? But his expression told me he wasn't joking. They led me through narrow halls into a chamber below the basilica, where two others waited. Father Moretti, the archaeologist, had the impatient stare of a man who'd seen too much dust and too little divinity. And Sister Alina, young, silent, her hands folded so tightly her knuckles blanched white. I tried greeting her. She just nodded, eyes fixed on the floor, lips moving soundlessly in prayer. That's when I first noticed the smell. Old incense mixed with damp stone and something metallic. It reminded me of confessionals after midnight, when sins hang in the air longer than faith. We were briefed by the same pale man, now standing behind an oak table. On it lay 3 leather folders and a candle whose flame didn't flicker, even in the draught. You will descend beneath the western crypt, he said. There, you will encounter what was uncovered during recent restoration work. You are not to touch, photograph, record, or... He paused, eyes cutting toward me. Attempt translation without permission. What exactly did we find? Moretti interrupted. The man smiled without showing teeth. That question is not yours to ask, Father. He opened one of the folders. Inside was a document stamped with Sigillum Secretum Vaticanum. Beneath it, a short oath printed in Latin. He handed each of us a copy. Ego, servus Domini, juro videre sine videre, scire sine dicere. I, servant of the Lord, swear to see without seeing, to know without speaking. I read it twice. The words twisted in my mouth like they'd been written to hide something. This isn't a standard confidentiality clause, I murmured. It's almost liturgical, the man's smile deepened. That's because it is. We signed. Sister Alina's hand trembled as she finished her name. The man took our papers, held them over the candle, and let them burn to ash. The vow is sealed, he said. Now follow. We moved through a corridor few Vatican staff would recognize. An access tunnel lined with uneven stone, the air colder than the catacombs. My footsteps echoed back at me, slightly off rhythm, as if something else walked just behind. Father de Vere, Moretti whispered, leaning close. You've been with the Jesuits long enough. Ever hear of missions like this? Not under St. Peter's, I said, and not without a crucifix in sight. That last part slipped out before I could stop it. I realized then that the pale man guiding us wore none, not around his neck, not pinned to his cassock. The small golden cross usually present on Vatican officials was missing entirely. When I asked about it, he glanced back with eyes like fog. Down there, he said softly. Symbols lose their meaning. We reached an iron gate sealed with wax and 2 red cords. Latin words were carved above it. letters blackened by soot. I brushed the surface lightly and felt warmth beneath my fingertips. Impossible warmth. Like the stone was alive, Sister Alina whispered. Deus nos custodiat. God protect us. The man produced a silver key, inserted it into the lock and turned. The wax cracked with a hiss that sounded too much like breath. The gate opened. The air that spilled out was ancient, heavy and damp. It tasted of dust and iron and something faintly sweet like decaying lilies. Candlelight from the hallway barely reached inside. I could make out a descending stairwell carved directly into the rock. The texts were found below this level, the man said. You will proceed in silence. Before we entered, I noticed a dark engraving on the wall to our left. The Latin letters looked burned, not chiseled, as though branded into the stone by fire itself. Non videre, do not see. I wanted to ask what it meant, but the man raised a finger to his lips. No questions, he whispered. Something about the way he said it made my chest tighten. I looked at Moretti. His skepticism was fading into unease. Alina's rosary beads clicked softly as she prayed under her breath. As we stepped past the threshold, the temperature dropped sharply. My breath fogged before me. The sound of the basilica above, the endless hum of pilgrims, the bells, the wind, vanished. All that remained was the sound of our footsteps, and beneath that, something slower, a rhythm, a heartbeat. I turned once, thinking I saw a shadow move along the wall, too tall to be any of us, too fluid to be human, but when I blinked, it was gone. We descended further, each step taking us deeper into a silence so complete it felt alive. At the base of the stairs, the passage opened into blackness. The man with no crucifix stopped and gestured for us to wait. This is where your work begins, he said quietly. Remember your oath. Then he turned and disappeared up the stairs, his candlelight shrinking until it vanished entirely, leaving us in darkness, lit only by a single trembling flame. Moretti exhaled. Hell of a welcome, he muttered. Sister Alina's voice quivered. We shouldn't be here. Maybe she was right, but I'd already broken my oath before taking the first step, because I hadn't told them the truth. I'd seen the script before, years ago, in a monastery library that no longer exists. The last time I tried to translate it, a man died. And as we moved toward that sealed chamber marked non videre, I began to wonder if this mission wasn't to uncover the text at all, but to see if it would recognize me. They say catacombs are quiet. That's a lie. Down here, the walls breathe. Every sound, every scrape of my boot, every tremble of the torch came back to me in warped echoes, as if the stone itself were whispering. We'd descended 3 flights of narrow stairs beneath St. Peter's when the passage widened into a circular chamber. The air was damp, thick, humming with the faint vibration of running water somewhere unseen. Father Moretti's torchlight cut through the dark, brushing over mosaics, bones, broken icons, and then faces, not carved faces, not paintings, faces pressed into the wall, as if the stone had softened long enough for human heads to sink halfway through before hardening again. Some were frozen mid-scream, others with lips pursed as if praying. Their eyes bulged open, glazed with mineral sheen. Sister Alina gasped and dropped her candle. Saints preserve us. I swallowed hard. They're sculptures. Must be, but I didn't believe it, because when the flame from her fallen candle guttered, I saw one of the mouths move. Moretti leaned in close, the skeptic's thrill lighting his expression. 8th century, maybe earlier, he said, but this texture, God, it's like the limestone fused with organic matter. These could be mummified remains sealed into the wall. Preservation through mineral osmosis. Don't touch it, Alina hissed. He smirked at her, then brushed his gloved hand across a cheek frozen mid-wail. Relax, sister. It's stone. The wall sighed. I swear to God it did. The sound came from deep within the rock, low and wet, like someone exhaling underwater. The torchlight flickered violently, and for a heartbeat every face seemed to turn toward us. Moretti jumped back. The hell was that? I tried to answer, but my throat closed. Something pulsed beneath my feet, steady, slow. A heartbeat enormous and deep below us. The air felt heavy with pressure, like the catacombs themselves were alive, watching. Alina's rosary beads rattled in her trembling hands. We have to leave. The rules. He said no questions. I turned to her. Sister, look around. There's a reason they sealed this place. Then why send us? She whispered. I didn't have an answer. In the center of the chamber stood a pedestal draped in black cloth, untouched by dust. My torch wavered over it, revealing faint symbols embroidered in gold thread, serpentine curves and looping sigils that shimmered even in the weak light. Something in my memory sparked. I knew those markings. I'd seen them before, in a manuscript buried deep in the Jesuit archives, a forbidden text catalogued only by rumor, Evangelium de Cineribus, the Gospel of Ash. My stomach twisted. Moretti stepped closer. That's it, isn't it? The find. Before I could stop him, he reached for the cloth. Don't, Alina pleaded. Please, Father, don't. He ignored her, fingers curling around the fabric. When he pulled it away, the temperature dropped so fast, my breath crystallized in the air. Beneath the cloth lay a stone slab carved with spiraling Latin script. Not etched, burned. The letters glowed faintly red, like dying embers refusing to go out. The faces in the wall fell silent, and then, softly, clearly, someone whispered, Lucian. I froze. My name. Alina's eyes widened. Did you hear? Shh. The whisper came again, from everywhere at once. Lucian, non legere. Don't read it. My torchlight trembled as the script began to shift, curling inward, the Latin melting into symbols I couldn't recognize. I felt dizzy, the letters dancing in my vision. Moretti squinted. It's some kind of pre-Roman dialect. Proto-Semitic, maybe. Can you translate this Devere? I hesitated. It's not supposed to be read aloud, he laughed. A dry sound that cracked the silence. You superstitious now? He traced the first line with his gloved hand. The stone hissed. A faint sizzle. Then a mark burned through his glove, searing into the skin beneath. He screamed, jerking back. Christ! The chamber answered. The faces on the wall screamed with him, their mouths opening wide in a chorus of agony. The sound shook the floor. Dust fell like ash. Alina fell to her knees, clutching her crucifix. Forgive us, Lord. I grabbed her arm. Don't pray out loud! The echoes twisted, forming words I didn't understand, until I did. It was the same phrase, over and over, layered with thousands of voices. He has spoken the name. Moretti's wound smoked. His breathing turned ragged, unnatural. He looked at me, eyes wide. What did I say? What the hell did I say? But I couldn't answer, because I was staring at the slab, at the letters rearranging themselves, forming a sentence I hadn't seen before. The mouth of man is the gate of return. Alina's candle flickered out. We were plunged into darkness. For several seconds, nothing but breathing. Then quietly, the whisper again, right beside my ear. Do you remember, Lucian? You've read this before. I spun around, torch flaring. Nothing there. Moretti stumbled backward, clutching his burned hand. We're leaving, now, I nodded. But as we turned toward the passage, I noticed something on the wall where the light brushed past. A new face. Familiar. Moretti's. Frozen mid-scream, half-formed in the stone. I shouted his name, grabbed his arm, and felt only air. His body was gone. The torchlight hit nothing but empty floor and the echo of his last breath. Alina began to sob softly, repeating Hail Marys under her breath. I couldn't move. My mind screamed to run, but my feet stayed rooted. I stared at the wall until I could no longer tell which face was his and which were the others. They all blurred together, whispering, one voice becoming many, many becoming one. Finally, I forced myself to look away. We have to report this, I said, my voice shaking. The man who sent us, he needs to know. Alina looked up, pale as chalk. The one without a crucifix? Her words sank in like ice. We climbed the stairs in silence, leaving the chamber behind. But as I glanced back one last time, the faint glow of the slab caught my eye. The symbols were fading, cooling back to black, except for one phrase still burning faintly red. Faith awakens what was buried. And though I told myself I didn't believe it, I couldn't shake the thought gnawing at my skull that maybe what we'd uncovered down there wasn't ancient scripture at all. Maybe it was memory. When I woke, the bells of St. Peter's were tolling for prime, yet the world outside my window was still dark. My throat burned with dust. My robes were streaked in grey. I didn't remember returning to my quarters. Only the smell of ash, the echo of Alina's sobs, and Moretti's face vanishing into stone. But that couldn't have happened. I must have fainted, hallucinated. That's what I told myself as I stared at my hands and saw soot under my fingernails. I wasn't alone. A silhouette stood by the window, watching the fog roll across the Vatican courtyard. The same man who'd briefed us, the one with no crucifix. He turned when I stirred, his expression unreadable. Father De Vere, he said smoothly. You've returned earlier than expected. I sat up, dizzy. Father Moretti. He's gone. The wall, he raised a hand. No need for details. I read your preliminary report. My report? I blinked. I didn't write one, he smiled faintly. And yet there it was on my desk this morning, a concise account signed in your hand. You did well. I felt my skin crawl. Where's Sister Alina? Resting. You're to meet her after Mass. Until then, silence. He stepped closer, the faint scent of myrrh clinging to his robes. His eyes were too pale, almost translucent. The Vatican thanks you for your obedience, Father De Vere. You've seen something few are permitted to witness. I don't understand what we found down there, I murmured. He leaned in. You will. When he left, the room felt smaller, as if the air had been stolen. I found my journal half burned on the desk, pages missing, ink smeared. Only one phrase remained legible on the last sheet, scrawled in my own handwriting. Don't let them make you read it again. The words made no sense then, but they would. Later in the basilica, the light through stained glass looked wrong, too red, as if the sunrise itself had bled. Alina sat near the altar, her veil drawn low. She wouldn't meet my eyes. When the choir began to chant, I noticed she wasn't mouthing the words. Her lips were moving differently, quietly reciting something else. I leaned closer. Alina, I whispered. Are you praying? Her voice trembled. It's still speaking, Father. The slab. In my dreams, I swallowed hard. Dreams can lie, can they? She looked up then, and I saw it. Black dust gathered at the corners of her mouth like soot. Last night I heard Moretti calling my name from the wall. The incense burned too thick. I felt the weight of 100 eyes from the painted saints staring down. When Mass ended, she pressed something into my palm. A small torn scrap of cloth embroidered with those same golden sigils. It was under my pillow, she whispered. You said not to read it aloud, but what if it wants to be read? I clenched the fabric. Don't give it voice. Promise me. She only smiled, a sad, distant smile. It already has one. By nightfall, I couldn't stand the silence. I returned to the catacombs alone. The guards didn't stop me. Perhaps they didn't see me. My torchlight flickered across damp stone as I descended again into that familiar circular chamber. The slab was still there, cold, silent, but different. The glowing letters were gone, replaced by a fine layer of black ash that formed faint imprints, like fingerprints across the surface. I traced the edge of one mark. The ash clung to my skin, warm as breath. I smelled sulfur, old blood, something like incense. Then the whisper, "You came back." I froze. "Who's there?" "You shouldn't have left me, Lucien." The voice was faint, hollow, yet familiar. "Moretti," I whispered. The ash stirred, curling upward in a spiral, forming the shape of a face. Half smoke, half bone. "His." "You spoke the name," he rasped. "Now it knows you." I stumbled back. "What is it?" "The Gospel," he said, voice cracking like burnt parchment. "Not written by man, a record of what the angels tried to erase." The ash face convulsed, mouth opening wider than humanly possible. "You can't unsee it now." I turned to run, only to find the exit sealed. The walls had shifted, closing in. The faces in the stone were back, hundreds of them, eyes following me. "Let me out!" A single phrase burned into the slab again. Faint red letters bleeding through the ash. To unseal the mouth, confess. The whisper surrounded me. 1,000 overlapping voices. Confess, confess. I fell to my knees, shaking. "I have nothing to confess." A pause. Then softly, "Not to us, Lucien. To her." The torchlight flickered, and from the darkness came a sound I'd heard once before, upstairs in the basilica. The faint rustle of a nun's habit. Alina stepped into the chamber. Her eyes glowed faintly red. "I told you," she said calmly. "It already has a voice." The slab pulsed beneath her feet, light crawling up her veins like liquid fire. Her smile was too serene, too knowing. I stumbled back, breath ragged. "Alina, what did you do?" She raised her hand, palm smeared with ash. "I read what you wouldn't." The chamber shook violently. The faces began to wail, not from fear, but from worship. "It showed me," she whispered. "The first word ever spoken, the word that made creation bleed." I screamed her name, but the sound was swallowed by the walls. When the shaking stopped, she was gone. Only her rosary lay where she'd stood, half melted, its silver cross twisted into a spiral. I staggered out, half blind, half mad, the whisper still clinging to me. Back in my quarters, I found ash under my tongue and words scratched into the inside of my door, letters burned from within the wood itself. She spoke it. "Now it's your turn." And for the first time since my ordination, I prayed. Not for forgiveness, but for silence. You ever wake up and realize the world forgot how to breathe? That's what it felt like the morning after Alina disappeared. The air itself was wrong, too still, too heavy, like the pause before confession when you know the priest already knows. I couldn't hear the bells of St. Peter's anymore, not a single one. Rome without bells. It's like a body without a pulse. I told myself I was dreaming. That's what I wanted to believe. But then I saw my reflection in the mirror. My lips were cracked black, like they'd been burned from within. And when I exhaled, ash drifted out. I remember thinking, I didn't read it. I didn't speak the word. But some part of me must have listened. They tried to keep me confined that day. Vatican officials, 2 men in black coats I didn't recognize, escorted me to an isolated wing of the Apostolic Archive. They called it precautionary quarantine. One of them, an older man with an accent I couldn't place, handed me a small wooden cross. For your own protection, he said, but when I held it, the wood burned my skin. I dropped it immediately. Both men exchanged glances. They didn't speak after that. Inside the archive room, they locked the door. I was surrounded by old texts, papal decrees, ancient Bibles, and something else. A sound, not a whisper, not chanting. It was like breathing, soft, slow, rhythmic, coming from between the shelves. Who's there? I called out. No answer. Just another long exhale. I reached for my rosary, but the beads were gone. Instead, a piece of charred string hung from my pocket, the melted cross still attached. That's when I saw it. The faint outline of footprints in the dust, leading between the shelves, small, bare, delicate. Alina's I followed. The prints ended at a locked cabinet labeled Classified, Codex Extinctus. The air around it shimmered faintly, as if bending. My ears started ringing, and a low hum filled my head, like 1,000 voices just beneath the threshold of sound. And then I heard her. Lucian. I froze. Alina. Her voice was behind me, too close. But when I turned, no one was there. You have to finish what we started, she whispered. You left the last verse unread. I didn't read any verse, I shouted, my voice trembling. The cabinet door clicked open on its own. Inside, wrapped in linen blackened by age, was a thin codex bound in human skin. The edges shimmered with ash. The Gospel of Ash, I whispered. The pages turned themselves, stopping at a verse I couldn't decipher. The letters moved, rearranging, forming words in Latin that made my head pound. Verbum tacitum, vox Dei, the silent word, the voice of God. And beneath it, something scrawled in fresh ink, modern handwriting. Mine. Speak it, and he answers. I slammed the cabinet shut. My pulse thundered in my ears. I didn't remember writing that. When I turned around, the room had changed. The shelves were gone. The ceiling arched high above, filled with golden mosaics. But the saint's eyes had been scratched out. Alina stood at the far end, barefoot, her veil gone, eyes as black as candle soot. I told you, she said, voice echoing like a hymn through empty halls. It wants to be heard. Whatever that thing is, it's not God, I whispered. Are you sure? She asked softly. You think you know the difference between silence and divinity, between absence and attention? She stepped closer, her shadow stretching across the marble like spilled ink. He's been waiting for someone to listen. I took a step back. Alina, you're sick. We can fix this. Her laugh cut through me. You still don't understand. The oath wasn't to protect the church. It was to protect him from us. The walls began to tremble. The mosaics wept molten gold. Stop it, I shouted, but she didn't. She raised her hands and began reciting the verse, the same shifting Latin from the codex. Each word tore through the air like a scream. The room darkened. A sound, low, guttural, endless, rose from below. It wasn't a growl. It was too vast for that. It was like the world itself inhaling for the first time. Lucian, Alina said through tears. He's not silent anymore. I covered my ears, but the voice bled through my skull. Words that weren't words, meanings that shouldn't exist. Then, everything stopped. When I opened my eyes, Alina was gone. The room was just a library again. Quiet, ordinary. Only one thing had changed. The Bible on the desk before me had rewritten itself. Every page, every verse was gone except for one line burned into the paper. I heard him. He spoke your name. I ran. Now I'm speaking to you because I need to make sense of this. The Vatican sealed the archive that night. The men in black coats disappeared. I haven't seen daylight in days, but the silence isn't empty anymore. It breathes with me. Every time I close my eyes, I hear the same voice whispering through the walls. Not accusing, not divine, just patient, waiting, and sometimes, God forgive me, I whisper back. You've been listening this whole time, haven't you? I can feel you leaning closer. That's what it wants. That's what he wants. I didn't plan to record this. I swore I'd never speak of what happened in that library. But the silence, it isn't silent anymore. Every second I try to ignore it, I hear my name, drawn out, deliberate, like breath across glass. Lucian. I thought I escaped. I thought locking the codex away in the catacombs would end it. But that was a lie, I told myself, like all the others. Because I finally realized something. I never left the catacombs. The day I escaped, I remember running up the stairs, breaking through the old iron door and collapsing in the basilica. But what if that wasn't real? What if that was what the gospel wanted me to see? There are details that don't make sense. How the guards ignored me. How Rome's bells stopped ringing. How every reflection looked like someone else's face. Maybe I've been beneath the Vatican this whole time, still trapped in that chamber, whispering to the walls, believing I'm confessing to an audience. Maybe that audience is you. It started again tonight. The voice came through the confessional grill. I thought it was another priest, maybe one who'd been sent to check on me, but the scent that followed, the burnt myrrh, the stale ash, told me otherwise. You ran, it said. I prayed, I whispered. Lies, it breathed. You listened. I wanted to leave, but I couldn't move. My legs felt nailed to the floor. Where is she? I asked. Where's Alina? She spoke the word, it said, the sound vibrating through the walls. She became what she worshipped. You envied her. That's not true. But it was. A part of me had always envied her devotion, the way she could surrender to belief without question. I studied faith. She embodied it, and now she had become its vessel. She waits, it said. Below, I should have stopped there. I should have prayed harder, burned the codex, begged the Vatican to seal it forever. But curiosity, that old Jesuit curse, pushed me back underground. The corridor leading to the sealed door felt shorter this time. The torches burned blue. The Latin inscription, non videre, was half erased, the stone behind it pulsing faintly like skin. I whispered a single prayer and pushed it open. The chamber was alive. Ash drifted through the air like falling snow. The slab was gone. In its place, a circle of symbols burned faintly on the floor, sigils spiraling inward toward a pool of something black and rippling. And there, kneeling beside it, was Alina, or what was left of her. Her veil floated in the air, untouched by gravity. Her eyes were gone, replaced by hollow glowing pits. Her lips moved silently, shaping the words I'd refused to read. Alina, my voice broke. Please stop. She didn't. The pool began to move, rising upward, forming a shape. A man-shaped shadow, taller than the ceiling, wearing no face. The air crackled with language, alive, letters forming and dissolving faster than the mind could process. "Lucian," she whispered. "He answers all who dare to ask." I fell to my knees. "This isn't God." The shadow leaned forward. "And yet you came to speak to me." The voice wasn't heard. It was felt, vibrating in bone and blood. Every prayer I'd ever spoken twisted inside me, rewritten, inverted. "Why me?" I gasped. "Because you believed in silence," it said. "And silence is where truth hides." It extended a hand, if you could call it that. The air warped, thickened. My rosary beads rose from my chest, hovering, each bead melting into black droplets that circled the shadow like planets. "You carry my word," it said. "You will deliver it." "I won't." It smiled without a mouth. "You already have." When I woke again, I was outside St. Peter's. Dawn, birds sang. The world looked normal, too normal. My hands were clean, my robes folded neatly, except for one thing. A Bible lay beside me, its cover scorched, its pages filled with my handwriting. The title page read, "The Gospel of Ash," transcribed by Father Lucian de Vere, and beneath it, in faint ash letters, "He spoke your name." I burned it. I burned every page, but even as the flames took it, I heard the words whisper through the smoke. Different this time, familiar. They weren't calling my name anymore. They were calling yours. That's why I'm telling you this. Not as confession, not as warning, as transfer. Because that's how it spreads. Through listening, through belief, through the act of giving it attention. You don't have to speak the word. Hearing it is enough. You've already heard too much. If the bells stop ringing tomorrow, if you wake to the scent of ash on your pillow, if you dream of a door marked non videre, don't open it. Don't even look. Pretend this never happened. Pretend I never spoke. Because once you listen, truly listen, he listens back. And the last sound you'll ever hear will be your name. End of story. I was part of a secret Vatican mission. What we found should never be seen. Story number 2. They told me it was just a storage room beneath the Apostolic Archive, but I've seen what's inside that door, and I can tell you this: if God exists, he's not the one they're worshipping down there. They say the Vatican's archives hold every sin humanity's ever hidden. But what I guarded wasn't written on paper. It was breathing behind a locked door. I didn't ask for the assignment. It was punishment. At least that's what I was told. A temporary reassignment after what they called a lapse in judgment. No one explained what that meant, but I knew. The church has a way of punishing curiosity without calling it sin. They escorted me down through corridors that didn't appear on any map, past marble, past catacombs, past the parts tourists whisper about. The air changed down there. It got heavier, thicker, like the walls themselves remembered every prayer that had ever been said in fear. My guide, a silent monk with cloudy eyes, never once looked back at me. He held a lantern, its light weak and yellow, barely piercing the darkness. We walked until I stopped counting the turns. Eventually, the sound of the city above faded completely. That's when I saw it for the first time. Room 417. The door wasn't made of wood or iron. It looked poured, moulded into the wall itself. Dark stone, smoother than anything else in the catacombs. Every inch was sealed with red wax, stamped with the papal insignia, and bordered by burned fragments of parchment inked with Latin scripture. Non orabis hic, do not pray here. Those words were written directly above the lock in jagged handwriting, like someone had carved them in a hurry. I remember asking what was inside. The monk didn't answer. He just pressed something into my hand. an iron rosary, heavy and cold, and said, "You will stand guard from midnight until dawn. You will not speak, you will not listen, and you will not kneel." Then he turned and left, the sound of his sandals fading into the dark. The guard booth was nothing more than a small glass box set into the wall opposite the door. It had one dim light, a logbook, and a rotary phone that, I was told, would only ever ring in an emergency. On the inside of the booth window, a paper list was taped, my rules, written in Latin and English. Never open the door. Never allow prayer near the door. Never speak of room. IV 17 to anyone outside authorized clergy. Do not leave the corridor between midnight and dawn. Do not, under any circumstances, look directly at the seals if they begin to glow. I laughed a little when I read that last one. Glow. Wax doesn't glow. I thought this was a joke, a test maybe. But as the first night passed, I realized how wrong I was. There's something about silence underground that isn't like silence anywhere else. It's alive. You can hear the walls breathe, the stones shift. Every drop of water echoes like a heartbeat. By 2 a.m., I'd started humming to stay sane. The kind of low hum you make just to remind yourself you exist. But at some point, I realized I wasn't the only one making noise. There was another sound, soft, deliberate, coming from the other side of the sealed door. A whisper. I froze. The voice was faint, muffled by stone, but the cadence was unmistakable. It was praying, Latin, old, older than I'd ever heard in Mass. I pressed my ear to the booth glass, thinking it was a trick of my imagination. Sanctus, libera nos. The prayer stopped the moment I noticed it, as if it knew I was listening. When I finally forced myself to sit down again, I tried the phone. Dead, not even static. And yet, the iron rosary on my wrist had grown warm. Morning couldn't come fast enough. When my shift ended, I stumbled up the stairs into the daylight. The other guards, stationed at higher levels, didn't meet my eyes. They never did. One of them muttered a name, Father Bianchi, and quickly crossed himself. Later that day, when I mentioned the name to my supervisor, he went pale. "There is no Father Bianchi in this division," he said quietly, "and you will never repeat that name again." He dismissed me before I could ask more. That night, when I returned to my post, something was different. The wax seals on the door had been redone, fresh and glossy, still warm at the edges, but the Latin text above them was gone, scraped off, and taped to the inside of the booth window was a new piece of paper, same handwriting, same Latin, different rule. If the door calls you by name, do not respond. The next few nights blurred together. The same corridor, the same darkness, the same silence that wasn't silence. Sometimes I thought I saw the wax tremble, as if breath moved behind it. Once I swear I smelled incense, sweet, old, burning in the air. But incense doesn't linger underground, not without smoke. Still, I told myself it was fine, that I was imagining things, until the whisper returned. Only this time, it didn't pray, it spoke. Matteo, my name, clear as day. I felt every hair on my body rise. The voice was gentle, almost kind, but the sound came from the wrong side of the door. I wanted to run, to scream, to pray, but I remembered the rules. Never pray near the door. So I did nothing. I sat there, trembling, watching the seals, watching the flicker of the lantern catch on the wax. The whisper came again, softer. "Brother, it's cold." I don't know how long I stayed frozen. The lantern eventually went out, leaving me in absolute darkness. And in that darkness I heard it move, just once, a slow drag, like cloth on stone. Then silence. When morning came, the seals were intact. The booth light flickered back on. The phone rang once, shrill and sharp. I lifted the receiver. "This is Father Matteo Vieri," I managed. "There's..." A calm voice interrupted. "You did well. Do not speak of what you heard. The next shift will begin tomorrow." I recognized the voice. Cardinal Mazzini. But before the line went dead, I swear I heard another voice in the background. Faint, but distinct. "Tell him." We remember, that night I didn't sleep. I kept seeing the door in my mind, hearing my name echo from behind it. And for the first time, I wondered if what was inside that room wasn't trapped at all. Maybe it was waiting for someone to open it. Maybe it was waiting for me. You ever hear something that doesn't belong to this world? I don't mean ghosts or demons. Those words are too small. I mean a sound that feels alive, like it's listening back. The first night I heard it, I thought it was my imagination, but the way the walls pulsed, the way my cross burned cold against my skin, I knew it wasn't. The routine was supposed to be simple. Midnight patrols, report every hour, check seals on room 417. The corridors always smelled faintly of oil and damp parchment, like an old tomb trying to remember it was once holy. The others, Father Rossi and the technician from archives, never spoke to me much. They'd nod, mutter, "God keep you," and vanish before the bells rang midnight. I thought it was Vatican paranoia, some bureaucratic relic. But that night, I noticed something new. The wax seal on the door looked different. Not broken, just softened, as if someone had pressed against it from inside. My flashlight flickered when I aimed it there. I remember thinking it was the humidity. It's easier to lie to yourself when you're underground. At 2:13 a.m., the noise began. It wasn't loud, more like breath scraping against wood. Then a faint tap, 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 like fingernails on stone. I froze. Every instinct telling me to move, to do something. But the only thing I managed was to whisper a prayer I half remembered from childhood. That's when I felt it. A vibration in the air, as if the door itself exhaled. The guard booth phone rang once, just once, then silence. Rule number 1, never answer calls after 2 a.m. I didn't. But whoever or whatever was on the other end didn't hang up. I swear I could hear faint breathing through the static, the sound of someone trying to form a word. My name, Matteo, drawn out like a sigh. I backed away from the phone, heart hammering so hard I could taste iron. I wanted to leave, to radio Rossi, but the rules were clear. No contact unless the seal broke. My training told me to stay calm. My faith told me to pray. My instincts told me to run. I did none of them. I just stood there listening. The tapping stopped. For about 10 minutes nothing happened. Then something scraped across the inside of the door. Slow, deliberate. Not claws, not wood. It sounded like chains being dragged over marble. When my shift ended at 4 a.m., I didn't mention any of it. The next guard, an older man named Corrado, looked at me too long before taking his post. His eyes were red-rimmed, like he hadn't slept in weeks. "You heard it, didn't you?" he said quietly. I didn't answer. He nodded anyway. "It doesn't stop." "Not really. Just gets quieter when you start to believe it's gone." That line stuck with me. By the next night, I'd convinced myself I'd imagined everything. Vatican basements have a way of bending your thoughts. The low hum of machinery, the weight of centuries of silence. Still, I brought a rosary and tucked it into my sleeve. Insurance, I told myself. Around 1:45 a.m., The corridor lights flickered 3 times and went dark. My flashlight refused to work. For a full minute, I stood there in the pitch black, listening to my pulse. Then, tap, tap, tap. I reached the door again, but this time the sound wasn't from behind it. It came from above me. There's an access vent right over IV-17, bolted shut, covered in dust, thick as ash. Something shifted inside it. A breath, then a whisper. Who's guarding me tonight? I stumbled back so hard I nearly hit the floor. My rosary snapped, beads scattering like teeth across the tiles. The whisper turned into laughter, soft and wet. The lights flickered back on. The seal on the door looked untouched. The vent was still bolted. My reflection in the brass handle looked pale and strange, like it was grinning a second too late. When I reported for debriefing that morning, Father Rossi asked if I'd experienced any disturbances. His tone was casual, but I saw the tremor in his hand as he poured coffee. If you hear anything again, he said, ignore it. That's not its real voice. Its real voice? I wanted to ask what he meant, but he changed the subject, mentioning the previous guard, Corrado's predecessor. He said his name was Fratelli, though he slipped and called him brother, like the man had once been clergy. Then, just as quickly, he corrected himself. Before I left, Rossi added, never look through the peephole. It remembers faces. That night, I taped over it. Still, I couldn't sleep after my shift. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that wax seal throbbing faintly in the dark, as if something beneath it was breathing in rhythm with me. And I swear, I could hear the faintest echo of that same voice, whispering from inside my walls. Matteo, you're next. The next chapter begins when Matteo decides to uncover who or what was sealed in room 417, and why the Vatican fears even its name. You said, continue directly with Chapter 3. ChatGPT said, Chapter 3, The Man Who Spoke Back. Word count, 800. I wasn't supposed to talk to anyone about the sounds. That was rule number 2. Never discuss the contents of room 417 outside official debriefs. But silence is a heavy thing when you're the only one hearing voices through a locked door. It festers. It starts to sound like thoughts. By the 3rd week, sleep was impossible. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, convinced I heard that same whisper in my dreams, my name curling at the edges of every prayer I mumbled. The worst part? The voice didn't sound evil. It sounded lonely. One night, during my 2 a.m. round, I found Corrado sitting in the hallway outside IV-17. His flashlight was off. His face was blank, eyes fixed on the door like it was whispering directly into his skull. Corrado, I said quietly, you're not supposed to be here. He turned toward me slowly, like something inside him had to remember how to move. You heard it too, he murmured. It wants to talk. I froze. Who? He smiled, the small broken thing. The man inside. For a moment I couldn't speak. The Vatican files said no living entity had ever been placed behind that door. Containment, not imprisonment. Whatever was in there wasn't supposed to be human. There's no man, I said, trying to sound certain. It's something else. Corrado shook his head. That's what they want us to think. But listen close enough. You'll hear words. Italian, Latin, please. He leaned closer, whispering. He said my name last night, told me he remembers me. I wanted to call for Rossi, to get this old guard replaced, but something in his eyes, pure shaking terror, made me pause. Before I could reply, the corridor lights flickered again. Then, from behind the door, a knock. Once, twice, a 3rd time. Corrado whispered, it's his way of answering. I didn't breathe. The air felt electric, like the moment before lightning strikes. Then a voice, faint but clear, seeped through the metal. Please, it hurts. The words weren't muffled. They were perfectly shaped, as if spoken inches from my ear. Corrado dropped to his knees, clutching his cross. "He's suffering," he said. "We can't just leave him. Get up," I hissed. "You'll get us both." But I stopped. The voice spoke again. This time it said, "Matteo." My blood went cold. The temperature in the corridor dropped so fast I could see my breath. I stepped backward, my boots squealing against the stone. The seal remained intact, glowing faintly in the emergency light. Corrado began to pray aloud, trembling, words tumbling out too fast to make sense. "Father, forgive us, deliver us from—" A deafening bang shook the corridor, not from the door, but from behind me. The guard booth door slammed shut. The phone began to ring. 2 short bursts, then one long 2 Kais AM. Exactly. Rule number 1, never answer. But Corrado, he didn't follow rules anymore. He lunged for the booth, lifted the receiver, and whispered, "Hello?" For 5 seconds, nothing. Then his expression changed. His mouth fell open. The receiver slipped from his hand and hit the floor. "Corrado!" He turned to me, eyes wide and glassy. It said I can go inside. Before I could stop him, he reached for the door handle. I shouted, ran forward, but the moment my hand brushed his arm, a shock tore through me like static and fire. We both stumbled back, gasping. The seal flared. The scripture etched into the wax burned bright red for an instant, then settled. The air smelled of ozone and iron. Corrado looked at me like a man seeing daylight after years underground. "It's not evil," he whispered. "It's a prisoner." That was the last night I saw him alive. The next morning his post was empty. Father Rossi said he'd been transferred. No details. No farewells. Just gone. I wanted to protest, but something in Rossi's expression silenced me. He looked afraid. "You will not speak of Corrado again," he said. "If you value your soul, do not seek him." That phrase stuck with me. If you value your soul. Later that day, while reviewing the security logs, I noticed something strange. At exactly 3:04 a.m., 1 hour after Corrado's disappearance, the camera outside IV-17 glitched. For precisely 11 seconds, the feed filled with static. But in the static, I could see something like a silhouette. It was standing on my side of the door. When the image cleared, Corrado was gone. The next night, the voice spoke again. It didn't ask for help. It didn't plead. It simply whispered, "He's free now." I didn't report it. I just stared at that door, the wax trembling faintly in the fluorescent light, and realized the truth. The Vatican wasn't guarding something to keep it in. They were guarding it to keep us out, and whatever Corrado had let loose, it wasn't done talking. You'd think I would have quit after Corrado vanished. Any sane man would have. But by that point, I wasn't sure I was sane anymore. His voice, that voice stayed with me, curling in the corners of silence. It whispered between heartbeats, in the hum of the fluorescent lights, in the echoes of my own footsteps. Every night felt like walking through someone else's dream, and then the dream started bleeding into the day. It began with small things, waking up to find the booth door open when I was sure I'd locked it, seeing shadows flicker behind the security glass when no one was there, a faint smell of wax and ashes lingering on my hands, though I hadn't touched the seal. The Vatican psychologists would have called it stress hallucination. I called it a warning. I had to know what IV-17 really was. The archives were 3 floors below the containment level, an underground labyrinth where old papal decrees, exorcism transcripts, and classified relic records were stored. My clearance shouldn't have allowed me inside, but I'd found Corrado's keycard the morning after he disappeared, wedged under my chair. I told myself I'd return it. Instead, I kept it. Maybe some part of me already knew I'd need it. When the elevator doors opened, the air hit me. Stale, dry, heavy with dust and centuries of secrets. I followed the flickering emergency lights through aisles of parchment and locked drawers until I reached a sealed glass case marked Archivum Obscurum. Inside, I saw a series of folders bound in black ribbon, labelled in Latin. One caught my eye immediately. Custodia 17, non aperire. Containment 17, do not open. My pulse quickened. I swiped Corrado's keycard. To my surprise, it worked. The case clicked open with a sigh, like it had been waiting. Inside were yellow documents, a few photos, and a recording log. The earliest entry dated back to 1894. The handwriting was neat, deliberate. Object secured beneath St. Peter's. Entity claims to be a messenger, but displays deceptive faculties. Speech induces compliance. No exorcism has succeeded. Seal reinforced by order of His Holiness. Another note followed, written decades later, shaky and desperate. Voice now mimics the penitent. Demands prayer. Claims pain. Must not be believed. Memory alteration noted in previous guards. There were names listed. Guards, priests, even one cardinal, all marked transferred. But next to the last name, Corrado Ferry, there was no notation, just a single inked word, freed. My hands trembled as I flipped through the rest, sketches of the seal, notes about vocal mimicry, and one photograph that made my stomach drop. It showed the door to IV-17 exactly as I knew it, but instead of the wax seal, there was a gaping hole burned into the wood, and behind it, something blurred, a human shape, but stretched, warped, as if the lens had refused to focus on it. Suddenly, behind me, footsteps, soft, deliberate, getting closer. I turned. Nothing, just rows of shelves. But when I looked back at the glass case, there was a reflection, someone standing behind me. A man, tall, in a Vatican Guard uniform, his head slightly tilted. "Corrado," I whispered. The reflection smiled. I spun around, empty. My flashlight flickered, then died. I was swallowed in darkness, and then, from somewhere deeper in the stacks, a whisper. Not distant, not echoing. "Just there! You shouldn't have come here, Matteo." I bolted for the elevator, the folder clutched in my hands. When the doors slid open, I nearly screamed, because for a second, I swore I saw wax dripping down the frame, glowing faintly like molten gold. Then it was gone. Back in the booth, I spread the papers across the desk. Every rule, every restriction, every ritual, it all made sense now. The Vatican wasn't guarding a demon. They were guarding a seraphim, or something pretending to be one. A being that spoke like heaven, but smelled like hell. That's when the phone rang again. 3 rings this time. It wasn't 2 a.m. It was barely midnight. The line wasn't supposed to work outside protocol hours, but the ringing wouldn't stop. Against every rule, every instinct, I answered. Static. Then a voice. "Matteo, thank you for finding the truth." I froze. It wasn't the same whisper from before. This one sounded human, like Corrado, but hollowed out. "What did they do to you?" I asked. The line crackled. "They lied. The room isn't a prison, it's a gate. A gate to where?" Before he could answer, the lights surged and blew out. A thunderous bang came from the corridor, the unmistakable sound of metal tearing. I grabbed the flashlight, heart pounding, and aimed it at the security feed. Camera 4, room 417, was wide open. The door hung from its hinges, seal melted away. I didn't breathe. My headset buzzed with feedback, then a soft, almost tender voice whispered, He walks now. I dropped the radio. Outside the booth, the hallway lights flickered back on one by one, stretching toward me like a fuse being lit. Each bulb popped as it reached the booth, sparks dancing in the dark. I ran through the hall, past the chapel alcove, down the stairwell. But everywhere I went, the air felt occupied, like someone was just out of sight, matching my breath. At the stairwell landing, I stopped. The corridor ahead was lined with fresh wax seals, each one glowing faintly. But they weren't on the doors. They were on the walls, and in the center of the hall stood Corrado. He smiled faintly, eyes black as candle soot. "It forgives us now," he said. The next thing I remember is the alarm screaming and the lights going red. That's where the footage ends, apparently. I woke up 3 days later in an infirmary with no record of what happened next. Just an unsigned discharge slip and orders to never return. But I did. And when I did, the door to room 417 was sealed again. Except this time the wax was fresh and stamped not with a Vatican crest, but with my own name. To be continued. Chapter 5. The thing wearing my voice. I shouldn't be recording this. I shouldn't even be alive to. The Vatican made it clear. Forget, deny, disappear. But if you're hearing me now, it means whatever's behind that door found another way out. They told me I left the facility on my own, that I resigned. But that's not true. I remember red lights flashing, walls shaking, Rossi shouting something in Latin, and then darkness. Next thing I knew, I was waking in a hospital room in Rome with bandages on my hands, my badge missing, and a priest watching me like I was contagious. He said I'd been unconscious for 3 days, that the incident was contained. But when I asked about Corrado, he only said, "His service has been acknowledged." Acknowledged. That word still makes my stomach turn. After they released me, I tried to go back to normal, but every reflection looked wrong. Every voice echoed twice. My apartment smelled faintly of candle wax. The first night home, I woke to the sound of someone moving in the kitchen. When I went to check, the lights were off, but I could see my own silhouette standing by the counter, its head tilted, just like Corrado's. Then it spoke. "Go back," it said softly. I couldn't move. My throat felt filled with smoke. "Who are you?" It stepped forward into the glow of the refrigerator light. It was me, not a twin, not a reflection. Me, same uniform, same scar above the lip, but its eyes, flat, empty, almost painted on. And when it smiled, it didn't look human at all. "You opened the gate," it whispered. "Now you have to keep it closed." I blinked and it was gone. I told myself it was a nightmare, a hallucination, trauma. The Vatican's shrinks would have called it survivor's guilt. But then my phone started ringing. No number, just the time. 2 a.m. The same as in the booth. The voice on the other end wasn't Corrado's this time. It was mine. "Don't hang up," it said. "It's stronger now. It remembers your name." I threw the phone against the wall. It didn't break. It just kept ringing from the floor, each chime slower, heavier, until it stopped, and the apartment went silent. That night, I went back to the Vatican. I shouldn't have been able to. My credentials were revoked, the gates locked, but the guards at the entrance didn't even look at me. They just nodded and waved me through, like they'd been expecting me. Inside, the corridors looked different, cleaner, empty. No cameras, no hum of machinery. When I reached the containment level, all the doors were gone, except one. Room 417. It stood alone in the middle of a black marble hallway, freshly sealed, glowing faintly. The wax was thicker now, but this time there was a new inscription carved into the frame. My name again, only now followed by a date. Tomorrow. I reached out. The surface pulsed beneath my fingers, warm and alive. A voice pressed into my skull. Thank you for keeping me. The sound wasn't external. It came from inside my head, like a thought whispered by someone else. I stumbled back, heart hammering. Then a figure stepped from the shadows. Father Rossi. But he looked decades older, his face hollow, skin like paper. Matteo, he rasped. You weren't supposed to come back. What is this? I shouted. Why is my name on the seal? He smiled weakly, sadness in his eyes. Because you spoke to it. It doesn't forget voices. He stepped closer, trembling. Every guard who listens becomes part of the binding. It's not a prison, Matteo. It's a covenant. The moment you answered, it claimed you. You're the next guardian. No, I said, shaking my head. I'm done. I'm leaving. You can't leave, he said softly. You already did, I blinked. What? He pointed behind me. The corridor was no longer empty. A second me stood at the far end, half shrouded in shadow. Same uniform, same expression, except this one's lips were moving silently, repeating words I couldn't hear. Every binding needs a vessel, Rossi whispered. It takes the body of the listener. The soul becomes the lock. I looked back at him, horrified. Then where's Corrado? Rossi's face twisted with pity. You've spoken to him already. The lights flickered. The other me started walking forward, slowly, deliberately. With each step, the wax seal behind me pulsed brighter. The air turned thick, sweet with incense and rot. Don't let it touch you, Rossi gasped, clutching his rosary. The lights blew out. A single hand touched my shoulder, and I heard my own voice whisper, You were supposed to guard it, not open it. Everything went black. When I woke, I was standing in the booth again. The monitors hummed softly, the same as before. The same dim corridor. The same door, IV-17, sealed and silent. Only this time, the reflection in the glass didn't move when I did. I raised my hand. It didn't. I smiled weakly, and it smiled back. A moment late. The intercom crackled to life. A young voice, nervous, uncertain. This is Guard Matteo, reporting for first night duty. Can anyone hear me? I froze, because the voice wasn't mine anymore. It was someone new, and somewhere deep below. Beyond that door, something laughed. A sound like broken glass and breath. It whispered one word. Again. Story number 3, it's funny. People keep asking why I don't fish anymore. I tell them the sea changed that night, but the truth is, the sea didn't change. We did. Pauses, voice trembling. And before you judge me, you need to understand. I wasn't supposed to pull it out of the water. I wasn't supposed to see it blink. You ever hear something breathe underwater? No, I mean actually breathe, like lungs, not bubbles. That's how I usually start the story, because it gets people to lean in, and once they lean in, they don't look away. I've been a fisherman my whole life. My father was one, and his father before him. We grew up by the water, a small coastal town that smells of salt, diesel, and secrets. The kind of place where the tide decides when you wake up and when you go to sleep. Folks here say the ocean's got moods, and that if you stay long enough, you start to catch 'em too. I used to laugh at that. I don't anymore. The night it happened, the sky was cloudless. No wind, no sound, but the slow, lazy slap of waves against the hull. My brother Liam was with me like always. He's younger by 3 years, but louder by 10. Always singing, tapping his fingers, making everything a song. I like that about him. The sea can be quiet in the worst kind of way, and his voice kept it human. We set out just before midnight. It was supposed to be a short run, just a few miles out past the ridge. The radio chatter earlier that week was full of strange talk. Sonar readings near the trench, shapes that didn't fit the usual patterns. People said it was a glitch, a school of tuna, maybe even a submarine drifting too close. But Liam had that grin on his face, the one that meant trouble. "Come on," he said. "What if it's something no one's seen before?" I remember laughing, saying something like, "Then it's probably better off staying unseen." But he didn't listen. He never did. Out on the water, everything looked wrong, too calm. The kind of calm that presses against your eardrums, like the air's waiting for something. Even the gulls had stopped following us. Liam joked about it. Guess they heard what we're after, but there was a tremor in his voice he tried to hide. I caught it though. I always do. We dropped the nets a little after 1. The water swallowed them clean. No drag, no resistance. The kind of cast that makes you think the sea's empty all the way down. We waited 30 minutes, maybe 40. Liam smoked, humming something low. I stared out at the horizon, that endless black split only by the blinking red of the buoy lights. Then it happened. The first jolt nearly knocked me off balance. The deck shuddered like something had slammed into the hull from below. Liam jumped up, grabbing the reel. "Got one," he shouted. But it wasn't excitement in his voice. It was disbelief. The line was spooling fast, too fast, cutting into the surface of the water like it was alive. I yelled at him to let go before the tension snapped his wrists, but he held on, knuckles white, teeth clenched. "It's pulling back," he gasped. "That's not how it's supposed to work. Fish don't pull back." The winch started to scream, metal grinding against metal. The whole boat tilted to one side, waves slapping higher, colder. I swear. The water began to churn in circles, like the thing below was stirring it on purpose. I could hear the net tearing somewhere deep, and then something moved, heavy, slow, dragging against the hull. We didn't speak for a full minute, just the sound of the rope tightening, groaning under weight no net should bear. I remember saying, "Cut it loose," but Liam was shaking his head, whispering, "It's breathing." Listen, that's when I heard it. Not air bubbles, not the rumble of the boat. Real, rhythmic, wet breathing rising from under the deck. I grabbed the knife, told him again to cut it. He didn't move. The line went slack so suddenly that both of us stumbled backward. Silence. Then the sound of something sliding off the side. Long, slow, wet. Like a hand dragging down wood. We never pulled it up all the way. That's what I tell people. That's the truth I give them. But here's the part I leave out. After it went quiet, I walked to the edge of the boat. The water was flat again, black glass. No sign of the net, no bubbles, no fish. Liam was staring down too, whispering something I couldn't make out. Then he looked at me, eyes wide, pupils blown out like he'd seen a ghost. "Did you see that?" he asked. I told him no, I didn't see anything. But I did, just for a second. A shape, pale and long, folding in on itself beneath the surface. We pulled anchor and left fast. Neither of us said a word the whole ride back. But I couldn't stop hearing that sound. The breathing. Faint, like it was under my boots, beneath the deck, following us home. That was the last normal night we ever had. Sometimes, when I can't sleep, I swear I hear it again. A scrape, soft and patient, against the bottom of my houseboat, like it's trying to find its way back, and maybe it already has. Everyone keeps asking why I deleted the video. But tell me, what would you do if your brother filmed something that shouldn't exist? That's what I said in my first upload about it. People thought I was joking. Clickbait. Another fishing horror story for views. But there was nothing funny about what we caught. Nothing funny about what came after. Liam didn't sleep that night. I remember waking up to the glow of his phone, the faint sound of replayed video, over and over, the soft whir of the reel. Then the thud, the splash. He was whispering to himself. I told him to turn it off, but he said, "Look, just once more. You'll hear it too." I didn't want to, but I did. The clip was only 13 seconds long. It started normal. Water rocking, net in the frame, Liam laughing. Then the camera dipped toward the deck. Something pressed against the mesh from underneath, pushing it up like a trapped lung. The net tightened, and for one frame I swear I saw it. Fingers. Not fins. 5 long, bone-white fingers slipping between the knots. When I looked up, Liam was already staring at me, his face pale. "It's human," he whispered. I told him, "It's a trick of the light. A seal, maybe. Something caught wrong." But even then, I didn't believe myself. He said he wanted to go back out there. "Just once more," he kept saying, like the phrase meant something. He wanted proof, better footage, something solid. I told him we were done. The engine had been making strange noises anyway, like there was sand in the gears. That morning, I went to Captain Ray at the docks, told him we might have snagged debris or wreckage near the trench. He just grunted, eyes never leaving his coffee. "That area's cursed," he said. "Been that way since before my time." Then he looked up at me. "You boys didn't drag anything home, did you?" I laughed. I wish I hadn't. When I got back to the boat, Liam wasn't there. The nets were still out, dripping in the sunlight. His phone was sitting on the edge of the railing, video open. The thumbnail froze on that same frame, those fingers. I hit play, but the footage was gone, replaced by a black screen. Just audio this time, the sound of water lapping, a heartbeat-like rhythm, and something faint beneath it, a voice. At first I thought it was Liam, muffled, distorted. But the longer I listened, the more I realized it wasn't speaking English or any language I knew. The cadence was wrong, like someone trying to imitate speech but not quite getting it right. When he came back that evening, he was quiet, didn't mention the video, didn't mention the sea, just sat on the deck with a beer, staring out where the horizon met the dark. I wanted to ask where he'd gone, but something in his eyes told me not to. Later that night, we heard it again. The scraping, not from under the hull this time, from inside the nets, piled on the dock. I remember walking toward them with the flashlight, my hand shaking. The beam caught movement, tiny droplets falling from a tangled mass of rope and kelp. I reached out and pulled. Something wet slid free, a torn piece of mesh stretched around what looked like skin. Pale, translucent, too smooth. Liam stepped beside me. "It's still down there," he said, voice flat. "It's following us." We didn't sleep. Every time the tide rose, the dock groaned, and I swore I could hear something breathing beneath it. The next morning, Liam wanted to show the video to the police. I begged him not to. "They'll think we're crazy," I said. "Or worse, they'll take it from us." He just smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. Maybe it already took what it wanted. That was the last normal conversation we had. By the end of that week, half the town was talking about strange sonar readings again. Nets going missing, boats drifting unmanned. Captain Ray closed the pier for 3 days. Said it was for safety, but we all knew better. Fishermen whispered about voices at night. Low, wet sounds calling names from the surf. I tried to delete the file from Liam's phone. It wouldn't let me. Every time I hit delete, the screen froze, then replayed the sound of that heartbeat, that false imitation of language. Finally, I smashed the phone. Thought it was over. But 2 nights later I woke to a thump against the hull. Then another, a pattern, steady, insistent. I thought it was the tide, until I realized it was coming from inside the boat. Liam stood at the bow, staring down into the black water. His lips were moving, whispering something. I called his name, but he didn't turn, just lifted his hand like he was signaling someone below. And then Faintly, something answered. A single ripple spread out across the surface, wide and slow. Then the voice came again, clearer this time, low and wrong, echoing his whisper back to him. He smiled. When I reached him, the water was still, and he was gone. Everyone keeps asking why I deleted the video. I tell them it was corrupted. But the truth? I deleted it because every time I watched it, it got longer. You ever play a sound so many times you start hearing things that aren't there? Because I swear, the last time I played Liam's recording, it spoke my name. It's been 3 weeks since he vanished. The Coast Guard called it a probable drowning, said he must have fallen overboard chasing something stupid. But I know my brother, Liam, didn't fall. He followed. They searched the bay for 6 days. Found nothing. No body, no clothes, no sign he ever touched the water. The only thing left behind was his waterproof phone case, tangled in one of the ropes. I still don't understand how it got there. Sealed shut, bone dry. When I opened it, there was one video file. Same one I thought I'd deleted, only now it was longer. 27 seconds. I should have destroyed it then, but I didn't. I don't know why. Curiosity maybe, or guilt. Probably guilt. I just needed to hear his voice again. The first time I played it, the audio was rough, static, muffled by water. You can hear the net creaking, waves slapping, the occasional clang of the boat. Then Liam's voice, low, shaky. "It's down there again," he says. "I think it's waiting." Then something answers. I can't describe it right. It's not a growl, not a word. More like a question made of sound, deep and wet, like the ocean itself was trying to talk. The second time I played it, there was a new sound layered underneath. A heartbeat, too slow to be human. The third time, that's when I heard my name. At first I thought I imagined it. The mind fills blanks when it's desperate. But when I slowed the playback down, boosted the audio, it was clear. My name, drawn out, distorted, spoken in Liam's voice but submerged, gurgling, like he was trying to speak through a mouthful of seawater. That's when I started recording these videos. The first upload was supposed to help me process it, to tell the story, to make it make sense. But every time I replayed the footage before uploading, small things changed. Background noises shifted. In one version, you can hear footsteps behind me, even though I live alone. In another, the water outside my houseboat sounds closer, like it's lapping against the walls. People in the comments say I'm just editing for effect. Some even claim to hear whispers if they wear headphones. But I haven't edited anything. Not 1 second. A few nights ago, I dreamed I was back on the boat. The sky was the same, moonless, flat. Only this time, there was no Liam. Just me, pulling the net alone. Something heavy inside. I remember looking down, seeing fingers. Those same white, bone-thin fingers, curling around the edge of the mesh, one hand then another. Then they stopped pulling, and the surface broke open like it was breathing. I woke up before I saw the face, but I could feel it watching me. That morning, the phone started ringing. Unknown number, no voice on the other end, just a wet, dragging sound. I hung up, but it called again, and again. I turned the phone off. Later that night, while I was reviewing the video for the next upload, I heard it, the same call tone, but this time, it was inside the recording. I don't know how to explain this part without sounding insane. When I paused the video, the sound didn't stop. It kept ringing. From somewhere beneath me, I went outside, flashlight in hand. The dock was empty, waves small and harmless. I walked to the edge and looked down. That's when I saw something drift just below the surface. Pale, motionless, almost human. I froze. The light flickered, and when it came back, nothing. That was the first night I started to think maybe I didn't delete the video soon enough. Maybe deleting it didn't matter. Maybe it had already spread. People don't understand that the sea remembers. It's not just water, it's memory. Everything that sinks stays part of it. And I think he's part of it now. Yesterday, I uploaded a clip for my subscribers, a small piece of the audio. I told them it was fake, just an experiment in sound. But when I checked the analytics this morning, something was wrong. The file had grown by 12 seconds. My version was 13. The one on YouTube, 25. I played it back. Halfway through, the static clears, and you can hear breathing. Slow, wet, deliberate. Then a voice. Not quite Liam's, but not anyone else's either. I'm still here. The video glitched right after that. Frame by frame, I could see something behind me. Tall, slick, pale like fog, standing in the reflection of the window. But when I turned around, nothing was there. I haven't uploaded since. I barely sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I hear the reel turning, the net tightening, the scrape against the hull. I keep thinking about the last thing Liam said before he disappeared. It's looking at me. I think I finally understand what he meant. It's not looking at us. It's looking through us. And if you're hearing this now, maybe it's already found another way to see. I thought he was gone. But last night, Liam came home. I don't know why I started filming again. Maybe because saying this out loud makes it feel less real. Or maybe because some part of me wants proof. Proof that I'm not losing my mind. Proof that I didn't see what I think I saw. It's been 5 days since the video glitched. 5 days of silence from the sea. No knocking, no scraping, no phantom calls in the night. I almost convinced myself it was over until I found the boots. They were sitting outside my door this morning. Liam's. Same mud stains on the toes, same frayed laces, only they were wet, inside, dripping seawater, as if he'd just stepped out of them. I didn't touch them, just stood there, staring, until I noticed the puddle trailing off toward the dock. That's when I heard the first knock. Slow, dull, from beneath the boards. 1, 2, 3. Then silence. By the time I got my flashlight, it had stopped. I told myself it was just the tide, maybe a loose rope. But when I leaned over the edge, I saw ripples. Small, circular, spreading from the center outward. Something had been there, something close. That night I dreamed of him again, standing waist deep in the surf, clothes soaked, eyes open too wide. He wasn't trying to speak this time, just watching me, waiting. When I woke up, the smell of salt filled the room. My window was open, curtains fluttering, though I swear I locked it. I decided to check the boat the next morning to prove to myself there was nothing there. The sun was already low when I reached the dock, the air heavy with that metallic scent before a storm. The deck groaned beneath my feet, each step echoing like a hollow drumbeat. The nets were gone, every single one, just coils of rope sliced clean, and in their place, scattered across the deck, were fish. Dead ones, not torn or gutted, just lying there, eyes glazed white, mouths open like they'd been gasping for air. That's when I saw the trail, thin streaks of salt water leading toward the cabin door. It was open. Inside, the air was damp and cold. My breath fogged. The walls were streaked with condensation, the way they get in deep winter, but it's still October. I stepped forward, and something crunched beneath my boot. A phone, Liam's old one. The screen flickered to life on its own. The video was already playing. The frame showed the deck at night, rain falling sideways, the camera tilted toward the water, and there he was, Liam, standing at the edge, back to the lens. He turned slightly, enough for me to see his face. His skin looked stretched, like it didn't fit right anymore. His mouth opened, and a noise came out. Not words, just a drawn-out exhale, as if his lungs were full of the ocean itself. Then the camera turned toward the water. Something rose behind him, slick and tall, with arms too long to be human. I only saw it for a second before the screen cut to black. When I looked up, the cabin window was fogged from the inside. In the condensation, someone or something had drawn a single word: down. I ran. Back at my houseboat, I locked every door, shut every curtain, but the smell of salt followed me in. Around midnight, the knocking started again. Louder this time, faster. It moved along the hull like footsteps. I didn't dare look outside. Around 3 a.m., my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I ignored it. Then it buzzed again, and this time, it wasn't a call. It was a video notification. Liam uploaded a new file. I opened it. The screen was dark, but I could hear waves, close and restless. Then the camera shifted, showing my dock. My house. The exact view from the shore outside. My voice caught in my throat. The clip ended with a hand, pale and dripping, reaching toward the lens. I dropped the phone. By the time I picked it up again, the file was gone. I tried to convince myself it was a prank. Maybe old footage glitched through the cloud. But deep down I knew better. The next morning, the tide was higher than usual, almost licking the edge of the porch. And there, tangled in the railing, was a piece of rope. Ours. The same kind we used on the Mara. I followed it with my eyes, tracing the line as it sank into the water. Something tugged it once. Hard. I've stopped trying to sleep. The sea is louder now, closer, hungrier. Last night I set up a live stream. I told my viewers I'd prove it once and for all. That if something was out there, we'd see it together. The chat was full of jokes at first. People calling me crazy, others saying they heard the breathing again. Then the feed glitched. The comments froze. The camera tilted toward the water on its own. And there, standing on the dock behind me, was a figure, wet, unmoving, face half-shadowed. I turned around. The screen went black. I woke up hours later, soaked, the camera still rolling. The only sound on the recording was my own voice, whispering the same word over and over. Down. If you're watching this, it means I didn't make it out. Or maybe I did, just not as me. This isn't live. I scheduled the upload last night, October 16th, 3 a.m., right before the tide rose. If it's online now, that means the sea took what it wanted. I just hope someone listens long enough to understand. I'm sitting on the floor of the cabin, phone balanced against the wall. The lights keep flickering, but I'm not wasting time fixing them. The sound outside is constant now, waves hitting the hull, rhythmic, almost deliberate, like breathing. You'd think I'd be used to it, but tonight it's different. It's not just outside anymore. It's inside. I can hear it moving through the walls. People have been asking why I keep recording, why I keep talking to the camera when everything's falling apart. The truth? It listens when I talk. If I keep the story going, it doesn't move as much. I think it likes to be remembered. Maybe that's the trade. Memory for mercy. There's one thing I need to confess before the end. Something I lied about. Liam didn't disappear at sea. I drowned him. I don't remember meaning to. We were fighting that night, screaming over the nets, over the video, over what to do with the thing we caught. He said we had to tell someone that it was dangerous. I told him we couldn't, that it wasn't just some animal, that it knew us. He laughed, called me paranoid, said I was scared of my own reflection. I snapped. One shove, one slip. He hit the rail and went over. The splash was quiet, too quiet. By the time I reached for him, he was already gone. But the water moved, slow, careful, like it was helping. And then, for just a second, I saw him again. Eyes open, staring straight up at me from beneath the surface, and behind him, something vast and pale, a shape that didn't end. When I got home that night, the knocking started. Not angry, not violent, just patient, like someone asking to come in. I thought it was guilt, that I was hearing things, but every night since then, the sound has gotten closer. It's not outside anymore. I hear it in the pipes, in the walls, under the floorboards. Sometimes when I breathe, I can hear it match my rhythm. Inhale, exhale, like it's learning. And lately, I've been dreaming in water. I can't tell where the surface ends. The light filters through green and silver, and when I look down, I see shapes, dozens of them, pale and still. They're not floating, they're standing, watching. Sometimes one of them moves closer, sometimes it wears my brother's face. A few nights ago, I checked the live stream playback. Remember when the feed went dark? There were 5 seconds of corrupted footage at the end. Static, color streaks, garbled sound. But when I slowed it down, I saw frames between the noise. Faces, not just Liam's. Mine too. Different angles, different expressions. Like the camera kept filming after it shut off. Someone, or something, was holding it. I know what it wants now. It's not just about taking bodies. It's about continuing. About being remembered, seen, spoken into existence. That's why it let me tell the story. Why it let me survive this long. Because I've been spreading it. Through every upload, every view, every comment. You're part of it now. The screen flickers. There's a sound behind me. Dripping, slow. I don't turn. I already know what I'll see. The smell of salt is thick enough to taste. The floorboards creak as the water seeps through, rising inch by inch. I can feel it soaking into my jeans, cold and alive. I keep talking, because if I stop, it'll mean I've accepted it. You know, there's something strange about drowning. They say it's peaceful in the end, that the panic fades once you stop fighting. Maybe that's true. But what if it isn't the water that kills you? What if it just replaces what you were with something else? The light flickers again. There's a reflection in the glass now, tall, hunched, its head tilted like it's listening. I can hear the creak of its joints, the slow drag of wet feet. My mouth is dry, but I force the words out anyway. It remembers faces. The reflection moves closer, and for a heartbeat, I see it clearly. Skin like moonlight, eyes black and endless, and beneath the surface of its face, shapes shifting, overlapping, like it's made of every person it's ever taken. For one horrible instant, I see Liam's grin flicker across it. Then mine. The water is up to my chest now. The sound of breathing fills the room, but it's not coming from me anymore. If you're watching this, I whisper, voice shaking, don't go near the trench. Don't listen when it calls your name. I reach for the phone, hand trembling, and lower it toward the water. The screen shimmers, catching the reflection of ripples spreading outward. Beneath the surface, faintly, there are faces. Hundreds. Eyes open, mouths moving in silence. The last thing the camera captures before it cuts out is a whisper, so faint it could be static, or maybe a voice you think you imagined. Cast again. The video ends. The comments appear within minutes. That last sound, it said my name. Why did the water move like that? Is this real? But there's one new upload on the channel, posted exactly 1 hour later. Same title, same thumbnail. Only now, the description reads, "It's not his story anymore." I woke up hours later, soaked, the camera still rolling. The only sound on the recording was my own voice, whispering the same word over and over. Down. If you're watching this, it means I didn't make it out. Or maybe I did, just not as me. This isn't live. I scheduled the upload last night, October 16th, 3 a.m, right before the tide rose. If it's online now, that means the sea took what it wanted. I just hope someone listens long enough to understand. I'm sitting on the floor of the cabin, phone balanced against the wall. The lights keep flickering, but I'm not wasting time fixing them. The sound outside is constant now, waves hitting the hull, rhythmic, almost deliberate, like breathing. You'd think I'd be used to it, but tonight it's different. It's not just outside anymore. It's inside. I can hear it moving through the walls. People have been asking why I keep recording, why I keep talking to the camera when everything's falling apart. The truth? It listens when I talk. If I keep the story going, it doesn't move as much. I think it likes to be remembered. Maybe that's the trade. Memory for mercy. There's one thing I need to confess before the end. Something I lied about. Liam didn't disappear at sea. I drowned him. I don't remember meaning to. We were fighting that night, screaming over the nets, over the video, over what to do with the thing we caught. He said we had to tell someone that it was dangerous. I told him we couldn't, that it wasn't just some animal, that it knew us. He laughed, called me paranoid, said I was scared of my own reflection. I snapped. One shove, one slip. He hit the rail and went over. The splash was quiet, too quiet. By the time I reached for him, he was already gone. But the water moved, slow, careful, like it was helping. And then, for just a second, I saw him again. Eyes open, staring straight up at me from beneath the surface. And behind him, something vast and pale, a shape that didn't end. When I got home that night, the knocking started. Not angry, not violent, just patient. Like someone asking to come in. I thought it was guilt, that I was hearing things. But every night since then, the sound has gotten closer. It's not outside anymore. I hear it in the pipes, in the walls, under the floorboards. Sometimes when I breathe, I can hear it match my rhythm. Inhale, exhale, like it's learning. And lately, I've been dreaming in water. I can't tell where the surface ends. The light filters through green and silver, and when I look down, I see shapes, dozens of them, pale and still. They're not floating, they're standing, watching. Sometimes one of them moves closer, sometimes it wears my brother's face. A few nights ago, I checked the live stream playback. Remember when the feed went dark? There were 5 seconds of corrupted footage at the end. Static, color streaks, garbled sound. But when I slowed it down, I saw frames between the noise. Faces, not just Liam's. Mine too. Different angles, different expressions. Like the camera kept filming after it shut off. Someone, or something, was holding it. I know what it wants now. It's not just about taking bodies. It's about continuing. About being remembered, seen, spoken into existence. That's why it let me tell the story. Why it let me survive this long. Because I've been spreading it. Through every upload, every view, every comment. You're part of it now. The screen flickers. There's a sound behind me. Dripping, slow. I don't turn. I already know what I'll see. The smell of salt is thick enough to taste. The floorboards creak as the water seeps through, rising inch by inch. I can feel it soaking into my jeans, cold and alive. I keep talking, because if I stop, it'll mean I've accepted it. You know, there's something strange about drowning. They say it's peaceful in the end, that the panic fades once you stop fighting. Maybe that's true. But what if it isn't the water that kills you? What if it just replaces what you were with something else? The light flickers again. There's a reflection in the glass now, tall, hunched, its head tilted like it's listening. I can hear the creak of its joints, the slow drag of wet feet. My mouth is dry, but I force the words out anyway. It remembers faces. The reflection moves closer, and for a heartbeat, I see it clearly. Skin like moonlight, eyes black and endless, and beneath the surface of its face, shapes shifting, overlapping, like it's made of every person it's ever taken. For one horrible instant, I see Liam's grin flicker across it. Then mine. The water is up to my chest now. The sound of breathing fills the room, but it's not coming from me anymore. If you're watching this, I whisper, voice shaking, don't go near the trench. Don't listen when it calls your name. I reach for the phone, hand trembling, and lower it toward the water. The screen shimmers, catching the reflection of ripples spreading outward. Beneath the surface, faintly, there are faces. Hundreds. Eyes open, mouths moving in silence. The last thing the camera captures before it cuts out is a whisper, so faint it could be static, or maybe a voice you think you imagined. Cast again. The video ends. The comments appear within minutes. That last sound, it said my name. Why did the water move like that? Is this real? But there's one new upload on the channel, posted exactly 1 hour later. Same title, same thumbnail. Only now, the description reads, it's not his story anymore. Story number 4, people think drowning is the worst way to die. But they've never heard what it sounds like when something alive, something that shouldn't exist, scratches on steel from the other side of the ocean. Pauses, shaky breath. I didn't imagine it. I swear to God I didn't. Though, sometimes I wonder if we ever even surfaced at all. I keep telling myself it was just the ocean. But the ocean doesn't tap in patterns. It doesn't whisper your name through 6 inches of steel. You ever notice how silence gets heavier the deeper you go? People think the ocean is loud, currents, sonar pings, whales, but below a certain depth, it's like sound gives up. You start hearing your own blood move. That's where we were, miles below, in total quiet, when I realized something was off. Anyway, yeah, this was supposed to be routine. A deep-sea observation run for a private firm. Sub 7, 3-person crew, 12-hour dive window, no external contact once submerged. I'd done a dozen missions like it before. At least that's what I keep saying. But every time I replay the footage, I can't remember pressing record. Captain Mira sat in the control seat, cool as always. She was the kind of person who treated pressure like a game, both the kind outside the hull and the kind inside your head. Dr. Holt was the opposite. Jumpy, meticulous, always scribbling data on his tablet. And me, I was the systems tech, the quiet one, the guy who makes sure everything stays sealed. We dropped through the thermocline just after midnight. The surface lights vanished instantly. That always gets me, the moment you lose the sky. It's not like darkness on land. It's a physical thing, pressing in from every direction. Mira said it's why the sub's name's Sub 7, because below 7,000 meters, pressure can crush a car flat. She liked that kind of imagery. Said it keeps people humble. The first 2 hours were normal. Mira cracked dry jokes over the comms. Holt muttered about oxygen ratios. I pretended to check systems just to hear the comforting hum of the engines. It was fine, peaceful, almost. Until I noticed the condensation on the viewport. Now that might sound small, but there's something you need to understand. Nothing should condense inside at that depth. Not unless temperature control fails. I remember wiping it off and seeing my reflection, warped, stretched. For a second, it looked like there was someone behind me. I laughed it off, told myself it was just nerves. That's what you do down there. You rationalize, because the alternative is panic. At Aero 346, we hit the trench shelf. Mira dimmed the interior lights to save power. The cabin turned red like a heartbeat. Holt said he detected something unusual below us, something metallic. Mira frowned but gave him clearance to deploy the sonar probe. I remember her words exactly. "We're not here to chase ghosts, Doctor. Mark it and move on." But he didn't move on. He kept staring at the sonar, head tilted. Then he said, "It's moving." We all looked. On the monitor, a faint shape pulsed against the static. Then, nothing. Gone. Mira told him to recalibrate, and that's when I heard it. The faintest sound against the hull. At first, I thought it was thermal expansion, just the metal settling under pressure. But then it came again. Scratch. Pause. Scratch, scratch. Rhythmic. Deliberate. I froze. Mira didn't notice. She was arguing with Holt about sensor readings, so I didn't mention it. I just kept staring at the wall, waiting. The thing is, I'd heard that sound before, years ago, during a training dive that ended badly, but I don't talk about that. I told myself this was different. I even said out loud, half joking, "Guess we've got crabs saying hello." Mira shot me a look. "That's not funny, Eli." We laughed it off anyway. That's how it starts. Humor is armor. You use it until it cracks. 30 minutes later, the noise came again, louder, closer. Holt slammed his palm on the hull, muttering something about Morse sequences. Mira warned him to stop, but he swore it was communicating. I told him he was hearing things. He looked at me and said, "So are you." And then, all at once, the lights flickered. The pressure gauges spiked. Just for a second, Mira cursed. I checked the seals, and Holt was whispering, "It's under us. It's right under us." Everything steadied again. Silence. Mira exhaled. "Minor current shift. We're fine." But her voice trembled. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to trust the instruments, the data, the steel around us. But that's the problem with pressure. It doesn't just squeeze metal. It squeezes truth, makes it pliable, makes you question what you did or didn't touch. I remember reaching for the release valve, just testing it, I think, and my hand was shaking. I told myself I didn't open it. I didn't. I think I didn't. Mira told us to rest in shifts. I killed the cabin lights, leaned back, and listened to the sub groan as if it were alive. Holt snored softly across the chamber. Mira hummed a tune I didn't recognize. And then, right as my eyes started to close, scratch. Not outside this time. It came from directly beneath my seat. A single drawn-out drag, like a fingernail tracing metal. Slow, purposeful. I held my breath. Mira stopped humming. Holt sat up. None of us spoke. The sound repeated. 3 times, same rhythm. Then silence. Mira whispered, "Hull stress." I nodded automatically, though we both knew it wasn't. I leaned down, pressing my ear to the cold floor panel. Nothing. Just the dull pulse of the engine. And then, faintly, right where my ear rested, scratch. Scratch, scratch, I jerked back. Holt's recorder clicked on. Mira whispered, "What depth are we at?" 8,000, I said. The red lights flickered once more. Holt whispered, "Something's trying to get in." Mira shot him a glare. Nothing gets in at this depth. But I couldn't stop thinking. If sound travels differently down here, slower, warped, what if it's not trying to get in? What if it's already inside? The scratching stopped. The gauges calmed. Mira went back to the controls. Holt wrote something on his pad I couldn't read. Me? I just stared at the viewport, at my own distorted reflection staring back. For a moment, I thought it smiled. And that's when the tapping started. Soft, rhythmic, from somewhere deep inside the hull. Tapping has a rhythm, breathing doesn't. That's how I knew it wasn't one of us. When I woke, the lights were still red. I don't remember falling asleep, but I must have. Pressure and fear do strange things to time. Holt was already at the sonar console, headphones pressed tight to his ears, eyes wide like a kid listening for Santa's sleigh. Mira stood behind him, silent. Her face was pale under the emergency lights. The tapping hadn't stopped. It had only changed. Now it came in bursts. Short, sharp, organized. 3 quick taps, pause, 2 more. Over and over, the sound came through the metal like a heartbeat. Mira ordered a systems check. Nothing was malfunctioning. No leaks, no movement outside. But the sound kept going, steady as a pulse. I asked if we could be near another vessel. Maybe a lost signal echoing through the trench walls. Holt didn't answer. He was muttering to himself, tapping the air with his finger in sync with the rhythm. When I leaned closer, I realized he was counting. 5 beats, he whispered. Repeats every 12 seconds. That's not random, Mira snapped. It's interference. Focus on your job, Doctor. But Holt ignored her. He pulled off his headphones, handed them to me. Listen, he said. Tell me what you hear. I hesitated, but put them on. At first, just static. Then faint, barely there, a voice. Or maybe not a voice, but the shape of one. Breaths between the taps. Something low and wet, and trying too hard to form words. I yanked the headphones off. It's feedback. Holt smiled, and I hated that smile. It's language. Mira exhaled sharply and turned to me. You know the rule, Eli. We log anomalies. We don't chase them. I nodded, but my pulse was racing. The sound had burrowed into me. It wasn't just in the walls anymore. It was in my chest. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time drowned down there. The tapping kept shifting, sometimes closer, sometimes distant, like it was moving along the hull. Holt swore he saw movement on the sonar again, a small shadow pacing the sub like a predator. Mira cut the feed entirely. Sonar ghosts, she said. Thermal drift. But Holt whispered something that chilled me. Then why does it know our depth? He showed me his tablet. The rhythm had matched perfectly with the rise and fall of our pressure readings, as if something outside or inside was responding to the sub's every move. Mira snatched the tablet from him and powered it down. You're both tired, she said. Sleep. But no one slept. At 07, the power dimmed again. The backup systems kicked in, slower this time. Mira cursed under her breath and went to check the control junction. Holt kept listening. I tried not to. I couldn't help it. Between the metallic pulses, I started hearing words. Not clear ones, more like syllables that scraped their way through static. I thought I heard my name once, then again. Eli, Eli. I told myself I imagined it. That pressure can trick your ears. But then Holt turned to me, pale and shaking. It's asking for you. I froze. What? He pointed at the recorder, trembling. It's saying your name, over and over. Holt laughed, sharp and brittle. Classified? We're 8,000 meters under. Who's going to file a report? Mira shot him a glare that could have cracked steel. We were contracted to retrieve something. That's all you need to know. Retrieve what? I asked. She hesitated. A signal. That word hung in the air like poison. Holt barked a laugh. A signal? You mean that thing knocking on the hull? Mira ignored him, fiddling with the navigation controls. But I could see it, the tremor in her hand. She was scared, though she'd never admit it. That's when the power flickered again. The red lights strobed. The hum of the engines dropped, and a deep groan rolled through the hull. A sound that didn't belong to the sub, or to us. It was the ocean itself, exhaling. The floor vibrated under my boots, and I swear the temperature dropped 10 degrees in seconds. Holt ran to the sonar, babbling about readings off the scale. Mira shouted for him to shut it down. But before he could, something new appeared on the monitor. Something massive. It filled the entire display. No defined shape, no edges, just motion. Like the trench itself had shifted. Holt froze, whispering, "It's alive." Mira grabbed his shoulder, forcing him to face her. There is nothing alive at this depth. But then, faint through the speaker, came that same voice. Slow, wet, distorted, open. It. Holt stumbled back, whispering, "It's calling again." Mira shouted, "Mute all channels." I did. But muting didn't help, because the voice didn't come through the radio this time. It came from the walls. The metal spoke. Every word vibrated through my bones. "Open it! Open it! What the hell is it?" I shouted. Mira spun toward me. Something buried beneath us. A structure. The company found it with sonar months ago. So this wasn't a research dive. Her silence was the answer. Holt was trembling, eyes darting between us. "You're insane," he muttered. "You brought us here without telling us?" "I told you what you needed to know," Mira snapped. "No," he said quietly. "You told us a lie before anyone could react." A metallic clang echoed through the sub, like something hitting the outer hatch. Once, twice. Then, a scraping sound, slow and dragging. Mira barked orders, trying to keep us focused, but I could see her panic. Holt lunged for the observation port, pressing his face against the glass. "It's moving," he whispered. "The trench is... Oh God, it's opening." I didn't want to look, but I did. The ocean outside wasn't dark anymore. A faint glow pulsed from below us, pale and rhythmic, like a heartbeat beneath the seafloor. And then I saw it. A massive circular shape embedded in the trench wall. Not rock, metal, rusted, ancient, breathing light from its seams. The voice came again, clearer this time. "Release me." Holt turned to Mira. "That's the signal, isn't it? That's what you came for." Mira didn't deny it. Her eyes were wet, furious. "They told me it was a vessel, a wreck. We were supposed to document it, not wake it," Holt hissed. I couldn't breathe. My ears popped as the pressure outside spiked. Every gauge screamed red. The hull shuddered. Something was rising from beneath the trench. Mira shouted at me to seal all systems. I tried, but one panel was flickering, the lock indicator flashing open. I swear I didn't touch it. I swear. Then came a sound that didn't belong to the ocean or to any machine. A low moan, like 1,000 voices singing underwater, vibrating through the entire cabin. Holt dropped to his knees, clutching his head. "It's inside me," he whimpered. Mira grabbed him, shouting, "Stay with me!" But Holt wasn't looking at her. His eyes were fixed on the viewport. "It's beautiful," he whispered. Outside, the glowing shape pulsed brighter, and I realized it wasn't metal. It was flesh, something enormous, cocooned in sediment and steel. The signal wasn't transmission. It was a heartbeat. The hull rattled again. This time, something hit it hard enough to dent the wall. The lights burst into flickering chaos. I felt the floor tilt, the sub lurching downward. Mira screamed for emergency ballast release. Holt laughed, delirious. "We woke it up!" I tried to reach the controls, but the entire cabin was vibrating now, an impossible resonance that made my teeth ache. Somewhere deep beneath us, the ocean split with a sound like tearing metal, and through it all, beneath the alarms, beneath Mira's shouting, I could still hear that voice. Eli. Just my name. Soft, gentle. I froze. Mira didn't hear it. Holt was still laughing. Then the power went dead. Absolute black. In the dark, the voice whispered again, closer this time. "You opened it." I don't remember screaming. I don't even remember falling. Just the weightless drift as the sub was pulled downward. Slow, inevitable, into the glowing moor below. When I woke again, it was silent. The lights were dim, flickering. Mira was gone. Holt's seat was empty. And on the wall, faint and wet, were the words scratched into the steel. "Surface, soon. You think drowning is peaceful. It's not. It's slow, and it listens to you while you die. When I came to, everything was tilted. The cabin slanted, the lights pulsing sickly red. The hum of the engines was gone. The silence felt alive, pressing in from all sides. Holt's seat was empty. Mira's headset dangled from the ceiling, swaying like a pendulum. I tried to move, but water was already ankle deep, sloshing cold against the floor panels. It seeped up from the seams, dark and oily. I reached for the console, but my fingers slipped on condensation. The air smelled like rust and salt. I don't remember blacking out. I don't even remember impact. One moment we were descending. The next, stillness. That kind of quiet that makes your heartbeat sound like thunder. Mira. My voice cracked, barely a whisper. Holt? No answer, just the sound of dripping. I switched on my headlamp. The beam cut through the fog like a knife. The walls shimmered with moisture. Tiny bubbles crawling upward, as if the metal was breathing. There was something else too, scratches, deep grooves carved into the steel, running along the cabin floor toward the observation port. For a moment, I thought maybe Holt had done it. Maybe he'd lost it completely. But when I looked closer, the markings weren't random. They curved, spiraled, like writing. I traced one with my finger, and it pulsed warm. Then I heard it again. The tapping. Only now it wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from the walls themselves. 3 beats. Pause. 2 beats. Then a voice. Faint. Underwater. Eli. My stomach dropped. I stumbled toward the main hatch, nearly slipping. The pressure gauge beside it blinked erratically, spiking and dropping like it couldn't decide what depth we were at. I pounded on the door, shouting Mira's name. No answer. That's when I saw her. She was on the other side of the cabin, half submerged in water, staring blankly at the viewport. Her lips were moving, but no sound came out. I waded toward her, every step slower, heavier. When I got close enough, I realized she was whispering to the glass. "Don't look," she kept saying. "Don't let it see you." Her reflection shimmered on the window, and behind it, something vast moved. It was like the water outside was thick with smoke, rolling and shifting. Within that smoke, a shape turned, a limb, a tendril, I couldn't tell. It brushed the hull, and the sub moaned in pain. Mira turned to me, eyes wild. "It's awake," she said. "It's listening." "What happened to Holt?" I asked. She didn't answer. Her gaze drifted back to the viewport. "He went outside. I froze." "Outside?" "The hatch is sealed." Her lips trembled. "It wasn't." My blood ran cold. I looked at the control board. She was right. The external lock indicator was blinking green. Open. That's when the scratching started again, right beneath our feet. Not delicate this time. Violent. Rapid. Like claws tearing through the hull. Mira grabbed my arm. "We have to shut it, now." We scrambled for the control lever, but the pressure was already building. The metal beneath us bulged outward. Water burst through a seam, spraying like a geyser. I hit the emergency seal, slamming the hatch closed. The sub shuddered in protest. "Hold it!" Mira screamed. I threw my weight against the panel, feeling it vibrate under my palms. Water soaked through my sleeves, ice cold and stinging. The lights flickered again, and then, clear as a whisper in my ear, I heard Holt's voice. "You shouldn't have stopped it." I looked around wildly. "Mira, did you hear?" She was staring at me, horror-struck. "He's gone, Eli. He drowned." But his voice came again, louder this time. "It's not flooding. It's breathing." The floor beneath us heaved. The entire sub tilted forward. I fell hard, my head slamming against a pipe. For a second, everything blurred. When I looked up, Mira was trying to climb toward the upper hatch. I reached for her, but a wave of black water surged through the room, sweeping me under. I remember choking, flailing, the taste of metal in my mouth. My headlamp flickered as I sank, and through the haze, I saw the viewport. Outside, something was moving, circling, its form bent light, as if the ocean itself was folding around it. Eyes, if they were eyes, glowed dimly in the dark, watching me sink. A hand grabbed me, mirrors, and yanked me up. I coughed, gasping, dragging myself onto the tilted console. The water was waist deep now, rising fast. Mira was shaking, hair plastered to her face. "We have to surface," she said. "Manual ascent." I looked at the gauges. "Engines are gone." Her eyes darted toward the manual release lever, the one thing you never touch underwater. It would jettison the ballast tanks, send us rocketing up. But if the hull wasn't stable, she hesitated. "We'll implode if we stay." "We'll implode if we rise too fast," I said. She stared at me, trembling. "Pressure changes everything." Those words, I'd said them once jokingly. Hearing them now made my blood freeze. Before I could stop her, she yanked the lever. The sub screamed, a sound like the earth itself tearing open. Everything lurched. I felt gravity vanish, water slamming upward as we shot toward the surface. The hull groaned under impossible strain. Mira was thrown back, hitting the ceiling. I barely grabbed onto a railing before the lights burst in a flash of white. And then, silence. The water around us froze mid-motion. My ears rang. I couldn't tell if we were rising or falling. My vision blurred, but I could see the walls pulsing faintly, almost breathing. Something whispered from behind me, soft, calm, familiar. "You opened it." "Let me in." I turned, but no one was there. Just the reflection of my own terrified face. And then, just before everything went black, I saw something in that reflection, another face, smiling. They said I survived, but no one ever explained how a submarine with a ruptured hull makes it to the surface intact. I woke to white light. For a second, I thought I was dead. That the brightness above me was the ocean's ceiling cracking open into something beyond. Then the light flickered, humming fluorescent, and I realized I was in a hospital, or something that looked like one. The air smelled like iodine and salt water. My hands were bandaged, skin raw beneath. I could hear a slow drip, IV fluids maybe. There was a monitor beeping somewhere, though it didn't match my heartbeat. It was slower, deeper. Someone entered the room, a woman in a grey uniform. Her badge said Marine Recovery Division. She smiled too quickly. "Good morning, Eli." My throat was raw. "Where's Mira?" Her smile faltered. "You were the only one found." I tried to sit up, but pain shot through my ribs. "That's not possible." She was right next to me. The woman wrote something on her clipboard without looking up. The wreckage was recovered 50 miles off the trench. The hull was damaged. I laughed, the sound hollow. It was shredded. She didn't answer. When she left, I stared at the ceiling tiles and tried to remember how we surfaced. There was a flash, the sound of screaming metal, and then nothing. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw that reflection again. The smile, the other face. That night, I heard it, the scratching. Faint, somewhere behind the wall of my room. A rhythmic, patient sound. Scratch, scratch, scratch. I froze. My monitor beeped faster. I pressed the call button, but no one came. The sound stopped. I told myself it was a dream. Trauma. Decompression psychosis. The mind invents patterns when it can't handle silence. But the next morning, there were wet footprints on the floor, leading from the corner of the room to my bed. I didn't tell the nurse. I didn't tell anyone. 2 days later, they discharged me. I was told to avoid stress and limit exposure to deep water stimuli, whatever that meant. They handed me a sealed envelope marked property of Sub 7 investigation. Inside, a data chip and a single water-stained photo. The photo showed me, Mira, and Holt before the dive, smiling beside the sub. But there was a fourth figure, blurred, standing in the corner of the frame, taller than any of us. Its face wrong, like it wasn't supposed to exist on the same layer of the image. I threw the photo away, but the data chip, yeah, I watched it. It was audio. The last transmission from Sub 7. At first, just static. Then Holt's voice. Panicked. "It's open, it's..." Then Mira shouting, "Seal the hatch!" "Eli, for God's sake, don't..." And then my voice. Calm. "It's not outside anymore." I stopped the recording. I don't remember saying that. I can't have said that. But my voice was steady. Certain. That night, the scratching returned. Louder. It came from behind the kitchen sink this time. The metal vibrating under my hands. I turned off every light. Stood in the dark, listening. 3 beats. Pause. 2 beats. The same rhythm from the trench. I whispered, "What do you want?" The answer came, not in words, but through the pipes. A wet, gurgling pulse that made my skin crawl. Then faintly, surface. Soon, I ran the tap. The water came out black for a second before clearing. My reflection in the faucet looked distorted, smiling faintly when I wasn't. I stopped drinking tap water after that. It's been 3 weeks since they rescued me, but I don't think I ever left the sub. The walls here creak at night. The air feels too heavy, like pressure still clings to me. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I can feel the current tugging at my legs again. Mira's voice visits me now, in dreams, in the static of the radio, in the buzz of the refrigerator. She whispers the same thing over and over. We never surfaced. I tried telling the investigators that. They didn't believe me. They said my brain filled in memories during trauma, that no one could survive a descent that deep, that the Sub 7 was found sealed, no evidence of breach. But if that's true, how did I get out? Why were there wet handprints on the inside of the observation glass? I started filming this confession, whatever it is, because I need someone to understand. If you're watching, you probably think I'm crazy. Maybe I am, but listen carefully. The sound, you'll hear it soon, because it follows the survivors. They said the hull was crushed by pressure, but I think that's wrong. I think something opened it from the inside, and maybe it followed me through the crack. Maybe it's still opening, little by little, in the spaces we don't see. Pipes, drains, reflections. The line between the ocean and the air was never meant to break. I keep my lights on now. I don't sleep much. Sometimes the air tastes like salt again, and every night when the world is quiet, I hear it. Soft, deliberate, closer than before. Scratch, pause, scratch, scratch. It's here again. Hold on. A faint metallic creak echoes in the background. The camera shakes slightly. Wait, no, that's not from my side. The sound grows louder, scraping right against the mic. Eli's breath catches. He leans close to the camera, whispering, trembling. Do you hear that? Pause. That's coming from your side, isn't it? Static fills the recording, then silence.